Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot Photography podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Vanie Poyey. You've been recommended by so many people that I should have you on the show and I should talk to you because you're not only extremely successful, but you creating some amazing work. You're also entrepreneur, which seems like you figured out how to make this work. Where a lot of photographers out there, I think, struggling with the business side.
Mm,
So welcome to the show. I have
thank
tons of
you.
questions. I want to go through your work. I want to see and check and talk to you about some other interesting topics such as AI, successful business, successful marketing. We're gonna just jump all over the place a little bit.
Okay.
But thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm truly honored to talk to you.
No,
And
it's
as
my
I said,
pleasure. Thank you
I
for the
have
invite.
tons of questions.
Okay.
So let me start. If you could tell me a little bit, how did you get into this industry? Because there's a lot of photographers out there who, they have different paths, right? There are people who coming from all sorts of different professions, and all of a sudden they figured it out. Hey, you know what? I want to be a photographer.
Right.
And some of them they're successful, some of them they don't. Everyone has own story. But tell me, what was your path into this industry? And second of all, what I want to ask you, why headshots?
Okay. Well, my dad was a professional hobbyist. And there was a time when you were labeled, that was an actual label, professional hobbyist, because when you shot on film, it was very expensive to do photography as a hobby. So it was his hobby. So I just kind of grew up with my dad taking pictures, and that's how I learned how to work my Nikon F2, which was his
Mhm,
Nikon, and it was
mhm,
passed down to me. And that's how I started getting into photography. And it was just something I did on the side for fun. I guess it was my hobby. Just kind of growing up, I would document my social life, and I was kind of
mhm,
known as the girl with the camera um, until I took an acting class because I dropped out of college very confused about what I wanted to do with my life.
mhm,
And in acting class, people discovered me as the girl with the camera and would ask me to take their headshots. And that's kind of how I fell into doing headshots. Honestly, it was just pure accident and luck and just being at the right place
mhm,
at the right time, I guess, because I did not continue to pursue acting.
mhm.
I became a photographer from there,
So how?
specifically for
Yes.
headshots. Yeah.
Absolutely. So how does whole thing evolve over the years? Because that's another thing. We starting everyone has to start somewhere, and I
Right.
know for headshots, it's something which I found even in my personal experience. Everyone thinks, oh, headshots are easy. It's like you're putting the person in the front of the camera, and then you just take a picture, you're done. And then as soon as you get into this, but that's the kind of mentality where most people, and my
Hmm.
background was weddings. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, I was shooting weddings for so many years,
Hmm.
what's the big deal with the headshots? And then when I start shooting headshots, all of a sudden this whole thing becomes so complicated and complex that I was just like, okay, this is not as easy as people think.
Uh-huh.
And it took me a lot of time to, let's say, figure out what exactly is even a good headshot. So tell me a
Mm.
little bit about your evolution. Like, you started shooting headshots, and how this whole thing progress over the years, because you have very distinctive style. It seems like
Yeah.
you found this kind of style of images which defined you, who you are, and your
Right.
style. So tell me a little bit about this journey. We don't have to go to like very specific details, but I'm sure you've been
Right.
doing this for quite some time, and I want to know like how this journey felt for you.
Yeah. You know, I don't know about it being hard per
Hmm.
se. Um, I do find it most easy to work one on one with people.
Hmm.
And I think the lighting is easy. It always
Hmm.
did feel like that to me. I think what's hard is that it's a service-based business. And so what's
Hmm.
hard is dealing with people and pleasing people and learning to become basically someone who can foresee issues in advance so that they don't pop up later.
Hmm.
So I think that's the hard part for me. But in terms of like evolution and finding my style, I think that this is probably true for every photographer starting out. I modeled my work after the people that I admired in
Mhm.
my niche in my business. And eventually what happens is I think you just gravitate instinctively towards what you want to do. And that's not
Mhm.
something I don't think you can plan so much as you need to let it happen. And
Mhm.
so I started out by modeling my work after the people I admired. And then I eventually found my own voice and my own style and my own vision
Mhm.
just because that's where my instinct took me. It wasn't
Mhm.
something I had to think hard about. But one thing that I did do is I did niche down to a specific type of headshot, and that I think helped me in business because I wasn't trying
Okay.
to do everything, which I see people try and do now.
Mhm. Yeah. So tell me, let's dig a little bit more into it. So
Yeah.
who inspired you as a photographer? Like who was the person who really make huge impression on you and you say like, you know what, I just love this style or I love this type
Yes.
of photography and I want to just kind of get some juices out of it and use it in my own work.
Yes. The person who made the biggest impression on me in my I guess like in Los Angeles
Hmm.
for actors was Laura Burke.
Hmm.
And she still shoots. And I just thought her style was brilliant. It was so different. It was not what everyone else was doing, and it was
Hmm.
perfect for me. And I couldn't believe that she wasn't charging as much as the other guys were. So
Okay.
my
Yeah.
first question to her was, "What? Why aren't you raising your prices?" And I was her client at the time, and so I was a client, and she just really made an impression on me because I was her client as an actor.
Hmm.
Because I did act for a little bit while I was doing headshot photography part time. So I really took what she did kind of to the next level. She did like quirky, um, just character actors, just different, and I took that, and over the years it turned into my style basically,
Hmm.
which is so different from hers now. So it's funny how each of us have evolved.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to dig into all this lighting and technicalities because like everyone can find this stuff
Yeah.
these days, and I know everyone has kind of own system which works. And
Right.
but
Right.
what I want to talk about it with you is the one of the most important element of headshot photography, which is the connection with your subject. Can you
Yeah.
tell me how you approach, this element of headshot photography? And tell me a little bit about creating this instant because you can really see that through your shots, and that's how I actually even define good headshots, where you can see that there's connection right away and you can see through those images. So tell me what is your approach, like how manage people coming in. You probably don't know them, or some of them, or there's some, I'm sure, returning clients, but those ones who coming the first time, and you have to create that instant connection to get
Yeah.
their personality, especially for acting headshots. I think that's a big one, right?
Yeah. I think that I started out that now that there's an evolution there.
Mm-hmm.
I started out doing, I think, what everyone else does, which is you start talking to your subject and you get to know them, you
Mm-hmm.
ask them questions. And so that is, yes, it's effective, but it's also time consuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, long story short, I ended up living with a chronic illness for 13 years that made me incredibly fatigued. And so I could not get through the day, without feeling extremely fatigued. And so I needed to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to make this process more efficient, just so my body can get through it, right? I mean, I'm fine now. I'm on
Mm-hmm.
drugs, and I got diagnosed and all that. But so like this is where my style was born and my method of connecting to people instantly, which is that I play games with my subjects.
Oh wow, okay.
So this is instant. Like you use the word instant, but it truly is instant. And it is something I teach when people want to have me mentor them. Like I do like a 1 day shoot with them and I teach them this. But instead of kind of getting to know my subjects, which I still do during downtime, during makeup, during the, clothing part, right, when we're picking out clothes. But during the shoot, I'm a lot more efficient because I just play games and it instantly gets them relaxed and out of their heads and connected to
Mhm.
me so that I bring out authentic expressions and I'm not having to sit there and talk to them and wait for them to respond, So, and it all really happened because I was ill. It's funny, but I guess that was
Mhm.
like the one good thing that came out of that illness is
Oh,
this.
yeah, it's interesting. Whenever we struggle, there's the best ideas coming to our life,
Yes,
right?
yes,
If you have
yes.
some issue or there is some challenge, and then you kind of
Yes.
down, and then okay, I gotta figure this out.
Yep.
So can you tell me a little bit more details about this gaming? You don't have to go into specific details, but how this whole thing works and why it's working so well for you.
Well, because people stay in the zone with me and they're
Mhm.
not thinking about the reason it works so well is because they're not thinking about what to do with their face. And
Mhm.
that's when people get nervous, right? They're in front of the camera, they don't know what to do, and they're waiting on you to guide them, and they get really awkward. They start to, depending on who they are. Corporate clients, I find, get extremely nervous. They start to
Yeah.
twitch, and it's just this really uncomfortable process for them for some reason. I can't relate, but I understand it because I've seen it.
Mhm.
So playing games with people just instantly gets them out of that mode because they don't have time to think
Mhm.
and they're present with you in real time. So yeah, so that's I think that's really the key.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about just the session itself. If we could just kind of dive into this, because it's not like I'm trying to kind of unfold everything what you're doing, but I would like to learn a little bit more how you even deal with those challenging clients. Those ones who we all have them. There's some people,
Yeah,
as you know, they're coming in and you can nail this session within 5 minutes, but there
right.
are people who are 30 minutes and you just like pulling your hair out because they building this entire wall, and then they stress, they nervous. The body is just telling you, okay, I'm not ready for this.
Right.
How you deal with those type of challenging situations.
The more challenging situations I deal or the challenging situations I deal more with are the ones where people are not happy with themselves, with how
Hmm.
they look. I think the nervousness part really is, I think, like 1 out of 100 for me, where I
Okay.
can't get them to be in the zone with me. So that challenge is sort of solved. But there is that issue of I look too fat, my face is too round, and
Mhm.
my teeth, my lips, my crooked smile, my eyes are whatever. Just people self-criticizing, right?
Mhm.
And I think the key there is two things I always like to do. I like to make sure that they understand that we have solutions in post, right?
Mhm.
One of the biggest surprises to them is that we can open your eyes so that they match. So don't worry about your lazy eye. Please don't
Okay.
try to open them because you're going to look crazy.
Yeah.
Just stay in the moment with me and smile, and we'll open it later. Just ask us, right? So those are the kinds of solutions I present to them when it comes to their concerns with post. And that seems to work. And then the other
Mhm.
thing is, um, I really think it's important to show them as you go. It's
Okay.
one of my favorite things to do is to show my subjects what we're doing so that they feel like they're collaborating. And
Mhm.
also, if there is anything that isn't working, we can address it right then and there. If the hair is in the wrong place, or maybe they don't like the way the outfit is laying. But if it's something that we can't change, then and they bring it up, I can just say, okay, is there anything I can do right now? Is there anything
Mhm.
I can change? And 9 out of 10, the answer to that question is no, it's just me, it's my face. And so, what you're doing by having these discussions in advance or during the shoot is you're preventing them from coming back later and complaining about those things that they didn't get to talk to you about the day of
Okay.
and then blaming you, and
Yeah.
saying
Of
you're a
course.
bad photographer because you're not, right?
Yeah.
You can't change someone's anatomy. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the process, because this is always interests me, especially when it comes to headshot photography, because it seems like everyone has own approach to
Hmm.
picking the final images. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that, and that sometimes what happens is that we have different vision. We see images differently. We can right away say which images are stronger, which are weaker,
Right.
and how you deal with clients. Because I've noticed this is also like a little bit of challenge for a lot of headshot photographers who like they like specific images, but the clients goes completely different directions. And then, like as you said, there's insecurities, there is some things which they don't like about themselves, so they don't see the big picture. They see those little elements which kind of make them basically make these decisions that they
Yeah.
picking not the right images. So like how you deal with this, like are you educating them, because you already said that you're showing them throughout the process what
Yes.
are we getting, and then how does the final steps to choosing the final shots look like for you?
So I would say two things about that. Yes, talking during the session about what's happening and what they're
Hmm.
seeing is super important. And I find that clients tend to pick more vacant but pretty images of
Okay.
themselves. And usually the pretty ones are quite vacant for their purpose, for what they need.
Hmm.
Maybe if it was a modeling shot, that would be a totally acceptable thing, but it's not for what they need, right?
Hmm.
And so I do sort of bring that up during the shoot, just like which ones I'm liking.
Hmm.
And if they do ask me to pick, which a lot of times they do, I think it's important for headshot photographers to hear this, and they may not want to hear this, but it's important to build social proof
Hmm.
on social media sites. And oh my gosh, I have to cough. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm just getting over a cold. So let me take a cough drop.
Sure.
But building social proof is something that immediately
You're okay?
hold on.
Yes.
So sorry.
That's okay.
Oh
Take all the time you need.
my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's all
Hopefully,
good. It was coming,
but
so.
oh my gosh. But building social proof on social media immediately builds a level of trust to where they trust my judgment.
Mhm.
And so I would say it's been years since I've had a client fight my suggestions.
Mhm.
So I think that that's really important, because the know, like, and trust factor in business is very relevant now with social media.
Mhm. Absolutely. Um, okay, so let's dive into business side of headshots, and then this
Okay.
is where I'm sure we're gonna have lots to talk about it. So what define successful headshot photography business? Because I know a lot of photographers out there, and this is also the topic which I really like to touch, because you can create stunning images. You can, I don't know, make people feel comfortable. There's all sorts of things you can do right, but if you cannot make this sustainable business, sooner or later this whole thing's going to die. um,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of photographers out there struggle with this because they're great artists. They know what they're doing technically, and they can create those stunning images, but they're not, how I can say it, they struggling with selling their product.
Yeah.
So what would, because I know you've mastered that, because it seems like you're really successful in this industry. So
Thank
tell
you.
me a little bit about this entire selling process and creating that trust that people coming to you and they're willing to pay whatever you ask them to pay for your services.
Well, I feel like there's two places where people go wrong, right?
Hmm.
One of them is that they compete on price.
Hmm.
And this is what I try to teach my clients, my photography clients, because I have a, a mentorship program where it's a
Hmm.
3-month program where I sort of like meet them where they're at and figure out a customized strategy for them, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things I teach is if you compete on price, you're just going to drive yourself out of business, right? And I find that there's two types of people. There's the person who just is uncomfortable charging people
Mm-hmm.
because, they feel like for whatever reason, because they're doing what they love, that they don't deserve to make a profit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's the person who doesn't have systems in place. And so they're constantly trying to compare themselves to how much other photographers are charging and trying to charge less so that they
We
can
can
get
get
more,
time.
right? And both of these people fail at
Mm-hmm.
business. So I feel like the key is not to compete on price, but to compete on value. And
Mm-hmm.
the value you provide is really based on what you do differently than any other photographer and
Mm-hmm.
how you advertise that. Whether you're talking about it on social media, whether you're talking about it on your website or in actual ads that you're running, it's really important that other people see your value,
Mm-hmm.
which is your differentiation from other photographers, both in your style and also the experience that you provide.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, I mean, look, this is controversial, I know,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't apply to every industry, but if your prices are up, you're going to compete on price and you're not going to give yourself the opportunity to sell your value.
Mm-hmm.
So in 25 plus years, I have never put my prices up. I did do an experiment for a short time for 6 months and I didn't like it. I put my
Mm-hmm.
prices back down.
Okay.
Um, So I put my clients, my prospects through a funnel. I bring them into my system and I sell them on my value and I get more conversions. And also I get them on my email list and I get the opportunity to sell to them later if they weren't yet ready to buy from
Mm-hmm.
me, or maybe I was too expensive, whatever it is, they're in my world now and I'm
Mm-hmm.
continuing to sell to them. Right.
Okay.
And I think that that's the key.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about those value elements, because that's
Mm,
something what I'm also interested in, right?
mhm.
Because value is just such a broad word, and then we can put value in service, the type of service we can put into like the quality of images. There's all sorts of different elements which brings that value to the client. So why don't we explore this a little bit and tell me what we should focus the most, or how we can kind of make a balance between all those little elements to make this whole thing work, and then so the clients can see the value. Because as you said, there's a lot of people coming in and they like, the first question is like, how much. They don't
What's your
see the
price?
big picture. Yeah,
Right.
it's more just the
Well,
price itself.
yeah, I teach how to have that conversation and
Hmm.
how to respond to the question, what's your price?
Okay.
So that you don't answer it. So the idea is, okay, you are a salesman, but selling is not an icky thing when you're helping people, and you need to understand that you're solving a problem
Hmm.
and you're helping your prospects overcome a problem they have. Okay.
Hmm.
And so it starts with figuring out who your prospects are. And this is where we define our ideal client avatar. We need to define who our ideal clients are, and we need to know them inside out.
Hmm.
When you're first starting out, this is an exercise that you do, right? That I give you to do. And it's a brainstorming exercise that you have to take the time to do. Now, when you're first starting out, you're going to guess at all these things, all these questions that you're answering. So I highly, highly recommend that you allow yourself the opportunity to get on phone calls with them, because you have time when you're starting out, right? And let them talk. Ask more questions and have them talk and listen to them more than you speak. And that's how you're going to learn about your ICA and what they value. Okay.
Hmm.
So when you're on the phone and you're hearing what people value and you're hearing their complaints from past experiences, you're hearing what they want, what they need, that's the value that you're going to end up selling.
Hmm.
So once you learn this about your ICA, and I recommend getting on the phone with them anywhere from 6 months to a year when you're in business first. And then you develop a funnel, a system where now you know exactly what they need and you know exactly what the value proposition is, so that you put that in your sales strategy when they come into your world, and you put them through a funnel. Like my people go through an email funnel,
Hmm.
and that email funnel includes a video, and it's essentially the conversation I would have with them on the phone, except it's in a little video format and it's super short, and it's just hitting those value points that they need to hear, right?
Hmm.
And then after that, it's a matter of, okay, does she solve my problem? If yes, I'm going to book with her.
Hmm.
Did that help answer?
Yeah, yeah,
Did that
it
make
does
sense?
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why, you know what, because you describing this very precisely, I think for a lot of
Hmm.
photographers out there, it's going to be such a valuable lesson. Because what I see, and like that was my even past experience.
Hmm.
I was there was no problem to, let's say, talk about what I do, the quality of images, but as soon as we got into the pricing part,
Hmm.
all of
Hmm.
a sudden the stress kicks in, and you just
Hmm.
like, okay, how I should even approach this, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So kind of preparing yourself for that moment, and then knowing, okay, you know what, I said everything what I supposed to say to create that value,
Yeah.
then completely changes the dynamic of the conversation, right?
Exactly. You don't want to be answering questions. You want to be the person asking the questions. And so I teach flipping. When they ask a question, I ask a question back. So when
Okay.
they ask me that price question, I ask a question back and get the conversation started.
Hmm.
I give them my value proposition. And then at the very end is when I will give them my price.
Hmm.
But I want them to hear what I have to sell first.
Hmm.
So that's the key.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great advice. And but you know what? Also, like I talk to other photographers, and they have completely opposite. They're starting with the price, and they're like, you know
Yeah.
what? If they want to work with me and the price is okay, they we can keep going with the conversation. But also, I talked to another photographer, and he kind of gave me another really interesting position. Like he never says the fixed price. He always have the range.
Right.
That's where he works with, and then that's
Right.
also kind of, it's a psychological little bit trick, because you don't kind of put the exact number. You just basically making them think this number is negotiable, right? And then we can kind
Right.
of take things off, we can take add stuff up. So it's just kind of, you're just prolonging that conversation for further discussion, and hopefully finding something which gonna kind of work for the client.
True. Yeah. I do have my starting at price
Hmm.
on my website.
Yeah, yeah.
So they
Yeah,
have an idea.
where they're
Um,
getting into. Yeah.
right, right, right. Exactly. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do, but I think what's important is to have them contact you. And I think that that depends on how hard it is to sell your services. There are some services that are harder to sell than
Yeah.
others. If you're doing beauty shots, I don't think that's hard to sell. I think
Mhm.
everyone wants to look good, and you're appealing to vanity, right? And so I think it's really easy to sell beauty if that's what you're doing, and you can have your prices up and be booked up.
Mhm.
But if you're doing something a little bit different and it's not beauty necessarily, I
Mhm.
think you have to work a little harder to sell.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: what is
Yes.
more difficult to sell, corporate headshots or acting headshots?
I think they're both the same.
Both the same.
Yeah, I think they're both. It's a matter of value for both types of clients. And corporate clients, I always get on the phone with
Hmm.
still to this day.
So.
I do not put them through a funnel because I do a lot of times have to sort of accommodate special needs and customize their packages.
Hmm.
But in the end, I always win them over by selling my value because I'm not necessarily the cheapest person. And with corporate, um, they usually want competent and not
Yeah.
cheap, and it scares them when you come in when your bid comes in a little too low compared to the market. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you just need to get to the bottom of what is important to them. And you can only do that by getting on the phone and asking them questions,
Yeah.
because every corporate client is a different situation. So for that reason, I'm always getting on the phone with them.
Yeah. And you know what? I've been hearing this from so many photographers. The
Hmm.
email is not the best way to communicating. The
Mm-mm.
best one is just the getting people on the call.
Yeah.
So what is the process there? Because as you probably know, getting people on the phone nowadays, it's also getting more and more challenging.
Hmm.
At least what I've kind of learned over the last few years, where like back in the days when the phone rang, everyone was just like, okay, I'm gonna pick it up. Nowadays,
Right.
it's like, okay, do
I
I
don't
know
know
the
that.
number or
Right.
whatever? So how you convincing people if they, let's say, send you an email with inquiry, and how you manage this to get them on the call.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. I would say corporate people are not phone averse for the most part,
Hmm.
I find, except when, like, if they're really young, the person in charge is young. So, first, I do call them and I do give them the reason for my call. So,
Hmm.
in if I don't get them on the phone, I ask my questions on the message and I leave a message because it's usually a business number. And then I follow up the email with those same questions and I say, hey, I left you a message and these are my questions, just to get the conversation started. And usually, if I don't get a call back, I also don't get an email back. And to me,
Hmm.
that's just not somebody that's serious. And then, if I find that they're emailing me back, but they're not calling me back, I go with it. That's fine. I don't want
Hmm.
to cause friction because that's their preferred way of
Communicate.
communicating.
Hmm.
I just ask all my questions via email and then I send them my price via email, and that's okay.
Hmm.
And eventually, if they are getting close to making a decision or hiring, or if they do hire me, they end up getting on the phone with me anyway, just to kind of figure out logistics.
Hmm.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. And I think,
Right.
what that's, well, I don't want to say it's the biggest challenge, but I think conducting the kind of negotiation process it's also extremely important, because like, also, I remember back in the days where people were calling me and I was like confused with prices, with services, and then like automatically was just like,
Mm,
you're done. So you have to be prepared. But the phone call part, I think talking to people also kind of give you all sorts of different changes the dynamic between you and the client, right? Because email is kind of
yes.
dry, cold. You're trying to be professional, but hearing somebody and like getting this message that you care about them, you try to solve their problem, you try to help them, they can really sense
Yes.
this entire process is the experience itself is different, right?
Yes, yes. When you're on the phone with them, you're also selling your personality to them,
Hmm.
right? Are you someone that they would want to work with? So they're getting a sense of my personality. And then it just escaped me. I was going to say something about that. Oh, and you get to ask questions and get live answers right away. Like, this is something I normally don't get an answer to via email, but I do when I ask. Like, I will ask my corporate clients, what is your budget? What are you working with?
Hmm.
And that's an answer I'll get when I talk to them live. And
Okay.
if they know the budget, I I get the answer, and so
Hmm.
I'll figure out if I can work with their budget and what I can do. So I think it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's switch the gears a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about promoting yourself. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that, because you mentioned already that you try to get new client, hold on
Hmm.
to it, and
Hmm.
just have that person to be returning client for whatever x amount of years, right? But how you getting the new clients? You're starting off, you're trying to get on the market, you try to build this clientele. So let's talk a little bit about getting new clients, not those return ones. What's how you deal with bringing the new, fresh, I would say, people to your services.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fast turning service. I have to have new clients all the time.
Yes. Hmm.
So it's what I do.
Hmm.
I live on new clients, because like family photographers, for example, you keep them. You're
Right.
photographing their kids as they get older or whatever. That's not how it works in my world. In my world, it's all new clients, and then yes, some returning, but not the majority. So I think that I like fast results.
Hmm.
So I believe, like, if okay, you either have time or money, right? If you
Hmm.
have time, you can do on the ground work. You can do outreach and you can get new clients by literally knocking on doors. Okay. Whereas if you have money, even if you don't, I recommend you see it as an investment because it will come back to you. And like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the biggest mindset issue that I come across with my photography clients is that they don't believe in spending money. They're scared. And I understand how scary it can be, but I've been through that and I can speak to how much faster you'll grow and how if you play your cards right, you
Mm-hmm.
will make your you will see a return on your investment. And so you do have to kind of think of it as an investment. Um, and it is faster, but I believe in advertising
Mm-hmm.
and marketing. I'm a big proponent of growing your email list and email marketing and SMS text marketing
Okay.
and social media marketing, organic and advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like, oh, and search engine optimization, of
Okay.
course. Okay, so those are the ways I get my clients because on the internet you have a broader reach than you do when you're knocking on one door at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the time to do it, by all means do it. I hate that stuff. It just takes too long, and I'm an impatient person. So I like big. I like to reach everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my process, really.
Yeah. So do you have like a specific strategy or, this is kind of like evolving because, also the social media platforms and the online advertising also is changing with the time.
Yes,
And I
yes,
think keep up with this also, you have to be a little bit open-minded and then don't kind
yes,
of get stuck on something. And like, you see it's not working, but people are still pushing it. Right.
right.
So what is your strategy when it comes to, advertising online? And then, like if you could share your kind of tips and advice, what
Yeah.
people should pay attention to.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple places you can advertise. A few places you can advertise in like the trade magazines, which are
Hmm.
online. And like, let's say you're a wedding photographer, so you would advertise in the Knot or whatever, right?
Hmm.
If there are any local trade magazines that are relevant to your business that cater to the same audience as your business, that's where I would advertise. And I think that would be probably the easiest catch in terms
Hmm.
of advertising. After that, there's search engine advertising, which is like, let's say somebody searches for corporate headshots and you have an ad come up on Google for corporate headshots. That's the second easiest because that is search based advertising, meaning
Hmm.
there's intent there for the prospect to hire you because they are actually searching for you, right? And then there's social media advertising, which is what we call interruptive advertising because there is no intent. And what you're doing is you're interrupting the scroll to say, hey, look at me, buy me, right? In my world, my clients live on social media. I used to just live on search engine optimization, and that's just not true anymore. My clients are more
Hmm.
on social media now. So I did a deep dive in social media advertising, specifically on for Meta, Facebook, and Instagram.
Hmm.
And I feel like now more than ever, I am investing in education. And I think that's again super important. While it's an upfront investment, it will, pay me
Yeah.
back, and I'm confident of that. But it does take a little bit more education because it isn't as easy as boosting a post or putting
Hmm.
up a picture and hoping it goes. I
Yeah.
look at competitors and I look at their ads, and there's a way on the back end you can see like what ads people are running and for how long. And I see a lot of people quit running ads and they fail and then they just stop because they don't know what they're doing. So I think it's really important that you invest in advertising education. And this
Mhm.
is also something like I run my clients through the basics of advertising on social media because when you know what you're doing, it is extremely effective.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the key is to when you're talking about interruptive advertising, it's the harder one, it's the hardest one to convert.
Yeah.
um, but it is also very lucrative if you can
You do this right. Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and also like I would like to add little things to it that is also for, especially for the meta advertising, because I do some stuff. It's
Hmm.
just a learning phase, right? Where you just like you
Hmm.
have to invest money and
Yeah.
wait what's the data gonna show them and how it's
Right.
learning on its own.
Right.
And I think a lot of people giving up right on the spot because they're not
Yeah.
getting the effects right away, right?
Yeah.
Plus
Exactly.
the everything is oversaturated nowadays, right? So you have to try, a lot of different things just to see what works best for you. And I've noticed that also a lot of people just maybe not giving up on this quickly, but they, it's a lot of testing, in my opinion,
Well,
right?
yes. But this is also why it's really important to define your ideal client
Mhm.
avatar and know them inside out and know what problem it is you're solving. Because if you approach advertising from a standpoint of I'm solving your problem rather
Mhm.
than here's a picture,
Yeah.
because that is not as effective as it used to be. I
Hmm.
think part of it is because of that saturation. I think you can figure it out. The things that Meta is making it a lot easier now, so that you don't have to test a bunch of audiences. Like they're using AI technology to
Yeah.
figure out, to push your ads to the right audiences. It's pretty much like it's mindless at this point, except
Hmm.
for the creative, what you put out.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to focus on. And for that, because it's interruptive advertising, it's really important to know your clients inside out, which goes back to defining your client avatar and getting on
So
the
let's
phone
talk a
with
little
them.
about that part,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
kind of intriguing me, because you've mentioned that
Yeah.
many times
Yeah.
about creating this avatar of the potential
Yes.
client.
Yes.
Can we explore that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, everything goes back to that now. In 2024, marketing is not possible without knowing your ideal client avatar. I'll, I'll give you mine so
Hmm.
you know,
Sure.
like, so you understand. Like, I know my ideal client avatar inside out, and like I said, this is an exercise I give my photography clients to do and to fill out and to brainstorm. And it's something they need to spend time on. And it evolves. It doesn't stay the way it is.
Hmm.
As you learn more and more about your clients, that avatar changes and then it becomes perfect, right? So my ideal client avatar is a character actor between mid 20s all the way up to their 60s, having a hard time getting headshots that look like them.
Hmm.
That is my ideal client avatar. They often are told to get a reshoot of they're too pretty in their headshots and they don't look like
Hmm.
that in person. And I'm here to solve that very problem. Do you see how specific it is?
Hmm.
So I am targeting this one person who's a character actor having a hard time conveying their personality in
Hmm.
a headshot and having a hard time conveying specific characters in their headshot. And it goes to them having a hard time getting auditions and having a hard time becoming a working actor. This is a very specific client avatar. And I push my clients to do this very thing, which is like
Hmm.
get very
Understood.
specific about your client avatar. And then how do you solve their problem? How do I
Hmm.
solve that problem? So if I'm interrupting your scroll on Instagram, it's got to like get your attention and say, oh, this person can solve my problem within the first three
Hmm.
seconds. So if
Yeah.
I don't know them, I don't know who the person is I'm interrupting, my ads are not going to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, especially for the acting headshots, because as you said, the corporate, they want to look good and
Yes.
clean, and then they want to look professional. But even in like it's what is kind of hit me right now, even within the headshot industry, you have to approach certain professions differently, because for acting you're looking for the characters, for um the corporate one you're looking for professional look, so it's a
Right.
kind of different approach. So let's go back, because you specialize in acting headshots,
Yeah.
and then like I want to a little bit dive in. Again, we're gonna just take completely different turn, and let's talk a little bit about creating those characters. How
Hmm.
you defined, someone is coming in, they have a problem, they cannot audition, they know what they're looking for, and now they just giving themselves to you, and you have
Right.
to find their personalities and you have to capture
Yes.
them. Let's talk about that process.
Well, it goes back to my games, really.
Okay.
When when you engage someone in the act of acting for my
Hmm.
actors and in the act of playing games, like speaking for my corporate clients, because I play games with
With
both,
both.
but just differently, right? Well, with actors, when you engage them in the act of acting, you can't not show their personality.
Hmm.
They're physically acting in front of you, and acting is being truthful under imaginary circumstances, right? So they're
Hmm.
they're being themselves, they're being truthful. So that, I think it goes back to that, is that process
Hmm.
of directing them and engaging them rather than just posing them. I do find that for actors, posing for my ideal client avatar, posing doesn't work because all posing does is make them pretty.
Yes.
Now there are photographers who are shooting actors and their ideal client avatar is a different person than mine, right? So for
Hmm.
that person, posing works, but that's not who I'm targeting.
Okay. So you have completely different approach to even like, pulling out those characters from these people, right? Because as you
Yes,
said, you're not posing,
right.
you just want to get the character. But,
Yeah.
we're not going to dive in more into this. Whoever wants to learn from you, they can go to your workshops, they can go to the mentorship program, and then they can kind of get more. So let's kind of go a little bit of different path now.
Okay.
Let's talk about the current state of headshot photography. I know it's booming all over because after COVID, everyone wants to have this online presence, and the headshots are extremely
Yes.
important.
Yes.
So let's talk about like what is your opinion, what is happening, like if this is something which gonna change, or this is something that we should be like in the peak moment when it comes to headshot photography. How you feel what's happening right now in this industry? And then I'm going to jump into AI in a second because this is another big like a disruption in our industry. Um, but like I want to start with basically discussing what's your take on what's happening in headshot photography right now?
Well, yeah, I do definitely feel and have seen, after COVID, and then here in Los Angeles after the two strikes,
Yeah.
a lot of actors hopped into photography. I think because
Hmm.
they just stopped working, right? And same with COVID. And I feel like in any market, when that happens,
Hmm.
prices come down, just overall.
Yeah.
And so now, if you're somebody like me and you've been around for 25 plus years and you're leveraged and you have a mortgage to pay and your
Yeah.
expenses are high because you're used to making a certain income, I think it becomes even more important to understand differentiation and to understand selling like um, a high value, or a what I teach, a VIP
Hmm.
experience, because that's part of the reason as to why people pay me more for the
Hmm.
same service someone else is charging $150 for, right? And isn't it the same with fashion, right?
Hmm.
There's this thing called fast fashion now,
Yeah.
and H&M came in, and H&M's a disruptor, and H&M's creating fast fashion, and now everyone's following in their footsteps. But then there's like the higher end brands that will still charge $1,000 for a purse versus like the $100 that you would pay for a purse, somewhere else, right? And mind you, just overall prices have come down even in
Hmm.
fashion because of fast fashion. And like there are brands now that are affordable if you buy it at Nordstrom Rack or whatever. But still, that brand, you are willing to pay for the quality. And I feel like it's the same with acting headshots. The only thing that I warn people about is to not stay stagnant.
Hmm.
You have to evolve and you have to be open minded and not stay stuck, because that's how you go out of business. That's what
Hmm.
happened to Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
Blockbuster had the opportunity to go to mail-in CDs and didn't, because they laughed at Netflix. And then here you are, Netflix is like the number one
Yeah.
streaming platform,
Yeah.
making, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of money. So I think that's the idea. I have seen people become photographers become obsolete because they didn't keep up with the times. And that's
Okay.
really, really important.
Yeah. So what would be like, we don't have to go to like a lot of details, but what
Yeah.
is one of those things which you think we should evolve? Like, what is the steps we should kind of consider to bring to our business and to our profession that, goes with the time? Because as you said, like,
Yeah.
we're living also, as you said, like the fast fashion, we're living in a fast
Yeah.
timing too, where everything is changing so drastically that by the time we figure out what the hell is going on, there's another thing coming in, and then we have to just
Right.
kind of jump to the next thing, right?
Right.
And then I think that was also interesting comparison when you talk, because I have actually the same experience. My dad was a photographer,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and like he had camera for, I don't know, decades, and then
Uh-huh.
nothing changed. The same film, the same
Yes.
developed systems. This
Yes.
whole thing was just kind of very stagnant. There was no
Yes.
as a progression in technology as we have right now, because even the
Yes.
last 10 years, everything is just like upside down, right?
Yeah.
um, so one of those elements, in your opinion, we should pay attention to evolve with the time, with the technologies, with everything what is happening around us.
Yeah. Um, oh, if I had to pick one, I would
Hmm.
say marketing, evolve with marketing. Look
Okay.
at what the young people are doing and how they're
Yeah.
marketing themselves because they're in on the know. And but the second thing I would say, evolve with technology.
Hmm.
So many photographers wouldn't switch over to digital. you know, Even I took forever to switch from Bridge to Lightroom for processing. Because I was
Okay.
used to Bridge, but I had to force myself. You have to force yourself. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but when it's uncomfortable, that's growth.
Yes.
And you have to evolve. Like you have to use AI. Like I use AI.
Yeah.
You can't fall behind. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump on this whole AI topic.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave because we have like still 10 more minutes. We can just
Okay.
stretch it a little bit, but I want to definitely talk about that, because there's a massive disruption first.
Yeah.
There's also quite interesting discussion amongst photographers. We have people who are extremely optimistic. There are people who jump already on it, but there are also people who are approaching this very kind of negatively, right? Like we can really
Yeah.
see there is this, like, beef going on right now between people and photographers. So what is your
Yeah.
take on AI, and how do you think this is going to impact our industry? And actually, I have one more question for you in a second, but let's talk a little bit about it, and then we're gonna jump into some more controversial stuff.
Well, I can't be one way or the other.
Yeah.
It scares the shit out of me because,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, it's
That's okay.
I cursed. Um, it does scare me
Hmm.
because because it's unregulated,
Yeah.
and I don't think that legislation is keeping up as
Yeah.
fast as AI is growing. So that's what
100%.
scares me. But at the same time, I do think it's an amazing tool. I use it in all kinds of ways, not just
Yeah.
in photography. I use it to help like brainstorm, to help me brainstorm, but I use it as an assistant. I
Hmm.
don't use it as it's not good if you try and like have AI write your blog.
Yeah.
That like your blog will not be successful in getting you any leads that way because it's not your personality and it's generic and it's awful, to be honest. But I use it for retouching. I think it's amazing as an assistant. I think if it's regulated, and that's a big if, it
Mhm.
it can open up a whole new world, and who knows? I think that new world is beyond my imagination.
Mhm. Yeah.
We can't predict the future. It's just so beyond what I think we can imagine.
Yeah.
But the scary part is just that there's just not just lawmakers are not keeping up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most common thing I'm hearing about AI, that is unregulated. So
Yeah.
I've been kind of talking about it a little bit, and that's why I'm asking a lot of photographers what they think about it. And actually, I was part of like Canadian conference this
Uh-huh.
year, and I talked to one of the organizers who also was responsible for competitions, and they actually approached this, which was kind of interesting because I had no idea that they testing every image wherever it comes to competition is running
Uh-huh.
through some different software, so the software can kind of pick it up
Pick
if there
up.
is some AI, whatever, and as soon
Right.
as they find even like a little tiny element which could, which I don't know, was
Ah,
created by AI, automatically
yeah.
is canceled, and they literally they basically dismiss the image because it's not kind of Yeah,
See,
so it's interesting, but the point what I'm trying to make and the
yeah,
direction. So a couple of days ago, I got this pop-up ad on my social media that you just uploading 5 to 6 images of
right.
yourself, and
Yeah,
the AI will create your headshot, and they have
yeah,
different types of styles, whatever. It looks fake, right?
yeah, yeah. It
But
does. Yeah,
it's already here, right? And people
right.
using it. And it was
Yeah,
interesting for me because it was like people saying, "Oh, it's really cheap," but you're getting the quality, well, the quantity, not the quality, because it's like for
yeah.
$100 you get like I don't know, 200 images, which is kind of
Right,
ridiculous when you think about it. Why do you need
right.
200 headshots? But what I want to ask you is, do you think at some point AI will just literally replace what we do?
See, that's where I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't think I can predict that. Right now, it's definitely in its infancy. I've had clients, corporate clients,
Hmm.
come to me after having a bad experience paying AI,
Yeah.
like $75 for, that many images
Whatever. Yeah.
look awful, right? Um, but it's hard to say. I don't
Yeah.
know. I can't
Yeah.
predict that for you. It's really hard to say. It can go both ways.
Hmm.
I love, like, for example, Photoshop right now has an AI tool that does skin
Yeah.
smoothing, right? So before I had purchased a pre an action for skin smoothing. I don't need that action anymore, and that person is now out of business. However, my retoucher is not out of business because now I'm asking my retoucher to use the neural filter in Photoshop on my
Hmm.
photos, and as a base, and then go from there. And I love it. And here's the thing, and this is why I don't like what those guys are doing with the contest, because just using that neural filter in Photoshop flags your picture as AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you post that on Instagram is saying there's AI in here.
Element. Yeah.
And the truth is it's an AI filter, but it's my photograph,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think there's like gray area even with those like the
Hmm.
system that's flagging, because I love using it for my
Hmm.
images. I think it looks great. It cuts down on the time that my retoucher has to spend on the photo.
Hmm.
So it's helping him. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings, but it's really hard to say if it's going to replace us. Honestly, I don't know if the human to human interaction can be replaced. I just
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. And also, I think, and I had this discussion already with some other headshot photographers, and they say that the experience itself, getting the headshot,
Yeah.
it's something profound for so many people. And as you said, like, I don't think AI can do that. And also, if let's say you're in acting business, whatever, or corporate world, and then like those platforms will start seeing, this is AI image and you cannot use it. That also might be some
Yeah.
regulation which say, hey, you know what, you have to be at least some
Right.
decent, I don't know, some real image which
Yeah.
represent who you are, not something which was created, because the AI was just like literally cutting off the face and then putting in
Right.
center. Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah. I did read an article that on LinkedIn, for example, by the corporate world, it's definitely frowned upon if your picture is AI, because it
Okay.
it 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 um, it takes away the trust factor.
Mhm.
You're lying about your image,
Yeah.
and therefore you're not to be trusted. So I did read an article about that. So who knows?
Yeah. No, it's interesting point, right? Because
Yeah.
it seems like, oh, and I think also when I saw this ad, which was also fascinating, I was like I'll send you the link to that page where they're selling those headshots, and I think also this probably was generated by AI because they had blog part of that
Hmm.
site,
Hmm.
but the first post was like about like type of headshots, and they like the first line, I'm not even lying to you, was like, the best way to get the headshots is go to professional photographer, but they
Yeah.
selling like
Yeah.
AI images,
Yeah.
whatever. So I was just like, okay, who even create that?
Yeah, it's really
But
unfortunate because all the blogs that you and I are posting, which are copyrighted,
yeah.
Google is ignoring, and all the other AI companies are ignoring the copyrights, and they're
Yeah.
winning in court right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they're stealing our own words to create, their own
Yeah.
blogs from our words. That is unfortunate, but Google is just has so much power and so much money, and I've been following this, and
Mm.
they're able to get away with breaking the law right now,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the sad part. And I think also, as you said,
Yeah,
like this technology is progressing so fast
yeah,
that even the legislation cannot really keep up with what's really happening. And I think we can even keep up. Like if you really think
yeah,
about it, what's happening, like it's just
right,
so changing, like literally. And I'm sure they're so ahead of us, and ahead, like, in the kind of their own world, what is, they know what it's coming, that we
yeah,
cannot probably even picture all this stuff.
no,
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for this very insightful conversation. If you okay with that, I would love to kind of contact you in a while, and we can just kind of come back to this conversation. It seems like there's a lot of to talk about. I think the industry is changing, and that was also one of the reasons I decided to just jump on this podcast and talk to other photographers to get their perspectives,
hmm,
get their worries, get their concerns, because maybe someone will hear that and then maybe address the stuff what we kind of, I don't want to say fighting for, but there's a lot of, I think, issues which needs to be solved,
yeah,
especially when it comes to this AI technology, which is like knocking on everyone's door nowadays. And
yeah,
like I was laughing the other day because back in the days, everyone was kind of scared that the robot's going to replace and those like kind of low end jobs. But now we can see it's affecting
yeah,
everybody. I have a friend who's
yeah.
got a transportation company. It's affecting his business, like lawyers, doctors, you name it. It's, and I'm sure that the
Sorry.
that's okay, the acting industry as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like the trade jobs are going to stay,
Yeah.
and the it's the lawyers and the more educated, the more
Yeah.
those
But then
jobs
if
are
you
more in
think about it, if those jobs going to be like taking out of the market, it's going to affecting, it's going to uh trickle down on all of us, right? Because if
right,
those
of
people
course.
who make most money, they're not going to be able to spend this money on our businesses, this whole thing is going to start kind of falling apart, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Please don't paint that dark picture.
No, I think
It's
it's
too
going to be okay. Well,
scary.
you know what? I think, and this is what we said before. When people are in this kind of down mode where things falling apart, we will have to figure something out, right?
Right.
And I think
Right.
maybe that's some going to be another little transformation, like like I don't want to
That's true.
compare this to when the digital came, but I'm sure you remember when
Yeah.
the film was kind of like taking over by the digital and everyone is losing their
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
and kicking and screaming, and everyone's like, okay, this is over.
And
But
who went
we
out of
adopted.
business? Who
Yeah.
didn't keep up? Kodak. Kodak did
Yeah.
not change, did not evolve.
Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
They could have gone to online galleries, and then all these new businesses popped up where
They could
they
completely
didn't keep
take
up.
over. Like if you think about it, they
Yeah.
had money, they had
Yeah.
resources, they had all
But
of
they
it.
just didn't evolve. That's why it's really important you
Yeah. I think the
don't stay stuck.
Netflix comparison was good. I even heard this I don't know, like this is the owners of the when the Netflix kind of came to place and they went to not Starbucks, the Blockbuster, and they tried to negotiate with them, and they tried to like, hey, why don't we just work together? And they laughed at them. It's like, you guys, you're joking, and they left. And then like what, 2 years down the road, Blockbuster was completely out of the business.
Oh, I did not know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, that's what they said. They approached them a couple times to um, kind of discuss this and try to find something they can work together. They were really open. Netflix was like, you know what, why don't we sit down at a table and see how we can make this work? And they just like literally, but again, this is also what you said, we have to watch what the young people do, right? The young
Yeah.
generation, because they think differently, they look at the world completely, and then we have to just pay attention what they do, not what these, I would say,
Yeah.
old people
No,
are
don't
thinking. Yeah.
don't don't be the old people. People,
Yeah.
don't get old. Seriously.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. I
Thank
will
you.
link everything to this podcast. That was really honored talking to you, and thank you for all these details and tips and advice, and then your approach to headshot photography. I think is going to help a lot of photographers out there, and being so open and sharing all your knowledge. That truly means a lot to me, and I'm sure everyone who's going to be watching it will learn a lot from it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so we will be in touch, and yeah, everyone, thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll have another one in the next few days.